When you buy furniture from Wayfair, you're not just getting furniture, you're setting your home up for a lifetime of memories. Visit wayfair.ca today or download the Wayfair app. Furniture made for all of life's moments. That's Wayfair.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Montreal, the everyday and the extraordinary. The Elias Macko Show on CJAD 800.
Robin Flynn filling in for Elias Macros. Lovely text just said, love when Robin or Trudy are on. The best. Please get your own shows. Trudy's on the air every single day. And I do have a show, Under One Roof. We're coming back this fall for more real estate and mortgage conversations in September. Don't miss it. But thank you. I do appreciate the kind text. Thank you for stroking my ego. Why do we care about climate change? During the last segment, I took calls from Quebecers, asked them what are the issues that they care about the most in this election, and not a single person mentioned climate change. And yet, the last time I was filling in for Elias Macos was the day after we had that huge flood, and everybody's basements were filled with feet of water. Everybody was complaining about their second or third flood in 2 years. We care about climate change when our basement floods, but the rest of the time we don't want to do anything to tackle it. And climate change is something we hear about all the time. Rising temperatures, extreme weather, wildfires, flooding, warnings from scientists about how it's too late. But for a lot of people, it doesn't seem to be top of the list for things that they worry about. Why is that? Is climate change something that's just too big and complicated for regular people to feel like they can do anything about? Maybe are we experiencing some form of climate change fatigue after years of very, very alarmist headlines? Here to tackle this subject is Jonathan Jarry, science communicator with McGill University's Office for Science and Society. Hey, Jonathan, how's it going?
Hi, Robin. It's going well.
So I work in marketing in my day job, Jonathan, and I think the biggest problem with getting people to take climate change seriously is a marketing issue. I think we called it global warming for too long, which didn't really sound like very much of a threat when you live somewhere that has winter 6 months of the year. So do you think maybe climate change needs a bit of a branding overhaul?
That's a good question. I don't know. I find global warming to actually be more terrifying than climate change, which is a bit more ambiguous sounding.
Yeah.
But our winters are getting warmer and warmer, and but yeah, you're right. It is not just warming; it is a bunch of different changes to the climate, and it's not really a branding issue. I think the problem is the speed of it is fast enough that we should be very worried, but it is also very slow, and so we can't really see it unfolding as the catastrophe that it is.
Yeah, I think how much is the globe increasing by temp every year? Isn't it like 1 degree or half a degree or something like that? I think when, people are used to living somewhere like Montreal that regularly swings from minus 30 in the winter to plus 30 in the summer, you're used to 60-degree swings. You think, 1 degree, what's the big deal?
Indeed, but it does add up, and it will have some major impacts on all of us, unfortunately.
Now, you mentioned that people sort of think about the temperatures getting warmer, but climate change tends to manifest in different ways. I mentioned the flash floods that we had earlier this summer, inclement weather events, let's say. It used to be sort of once in a generation. We had that big flood on the Décarie. It was huge news, and then this only happens once in a generation. Now these things happen every year, sometimes multiple times a year. So what can we continue to expect as climate change continues to progress?
Well, I'm not a climate change expert, but I will say that we are going to see more of these types of events happening. People will be familiar with forest burning and orange skies that we see occasionally in the summer. We've seen some very horrible footage earlier this very summer. Air pollution that comes with it, but also mass migrations, which we don't think about as much. But there are areas of the globe that will become very hard for people to live in, and they will start to migrate, and that will cause some major political issues.
In conversation with Jonathan Jarry, science communicator at McGill University's Office for Science and Society. Is it too late to do anything? I think at this point we keep hearing, I mentioned those alarmist headlines that, the toothpaste is out of the tube. Is it too late for us to actually tackle climate change in a meaningful way?
It's not too late. I mean, there are there are measures that we can take now to mitigate some future harm that does not need to happen. But we also need to adapt to things where, the harm is already happening. I mean, petrochemical companies have known about this since the 1950s, and they've been very good at sort of telling us that everything is okay, everything is fine. So there are things that it's a little bit too late, but it is not too late to mitigate what is happening.
Now, I wonder, sort of the smaller ways that we can contribute as regular people. I always try to recycle things that are recyclable. I unplug my smaller appliances like my toaster when they're not in use. But it always feels like I'm having such a minuscule impact to big industries and auto pollution, fast fashion. Can we really make a difference as just, regular people?
There are things that we can do as individuals. I mean, reducing your meat consumption, especially your beef consumption, if you can. Don't hop on an airplane, multiple times a year for funsies. But the biggest thing is to rein in the petrochemical industry and to invest in renewable energy, and that requires political power. So when we vote, as you pointed out, we should think about climate change, and we should ask our politicians what they're willing to do concretely about it.
In conversation with Jonathan Jarry, science communicator with McGill University's Office for Science and Society. Is there anything we can do to make people care? I mean, that is one of the biggest struggles I think people have is, when you're passionate about a subject and the impact it is having, just trying to get, attention during news cycles is becoming increasingly challenging.
So, you raise a very interesting point, which is this perceived climate apathy. Some people are generally apathetic to it. Other people are sort of mourning by anticipation, and so they may look apathetic, but it's just because they see our efforts as being futile. They feel powerless to change these things. One study that I found quite interesting is how do we present data to people in a way that will convince them that, yes, this is real, this is happening, we need to do something about this. We tend to see these graphs of increasing temperatures year after year, and these gradual increases. And that is not as effective as it could be. And there was a study that showed that when you show instead, a graph showing, for instance, if a lake froze on a particular winter or not, these binary data where you have two lines and you get a little dot at the top if the lake did freeze, or you get a little dot at the bottom if the lake did not freeze. And when you show people this, and you show this binary of either it happened or it didn't happen, they perceive the change much more than they would otherwise. And so we have very good data, but it's how we present the data to the people that can make a difference.
That's such a good point. Right away, I thought about this. I saw this graph, I think it was last year, where they had a bunch of Christmas trees all lined up. And for the years that we had green Christmases, the trees were green. And the years that we had white Christmases, they had little snow caps on the trees. And when you saw years and years in a row with green trees, it really showed the difference from having white Christmases every year to now it feels like we rarely see white Christmases anymore. And it was really stark to see it in that graph. So you bring up a great point. That's why you're a science communicator, Jonathan, because you know how to present this information to the public. Jonathan Jarry, science communicator with McGill University's Office for Science and Society. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
10:15 is the time here on CJAD.
When you buy furniture from Wayfair, you're not just getting furniture, you're setting your home up for a lifetime of memories. Visit wayfair.ca today or download the Wayfair app. Furniture made for all of life's moments. That's Wayfair.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all. Bryan Adams Radio. I'm coming back to you. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.
Stories impacting Montrealers. News impacting Montreal. The Elias Macko Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Robin Flynn filling in for Elias Mackos with the Quebec election now approaching. It'll officially be called in less than 10 minutes from now. Montreal is making sure that its priorities are heard loud and clear in this provincial campaign. The city is looking for Quebec for some action on some of its biggest challenges, from housing and homelessness to public transit, infrastructure and public safety, and the financial pressures facing municipalities. And while the provincial election is about choosing a government for all of Quebec, the decisions made at the National Assembly can have a huge impact on how Montreal operates and how much money it has to actually address the issues that matter most to Montrealers. Leslie Roberts is city councillor for Peter McGill and part of the executive committee responsible for the English-speaking community, universities, and the downtown core. Hey, Leslie, great to chat with you.
It's a pleasure to talk to you, Robin.
It's great. In my day job, I work as a podcast producer, and we got to connect last week, which is so great. So I get to speak with you 2 weeks in a row. I'm so lucky.
Me too. And we go back a few years when I used to work there as well.
Yeah, exactly. So much fun. Okay, so what are some of the city's priorities for the election? I kind of outlined them vaguely, but specifically, what is the city looking for?
Well, you covered it well, but let me first set the table for you. Remember, we are the economic engine of the province of Quebec, and we do not play that role with the current government. Unfortunately, the previous administration under Valérie Plante did not have a really good relationship with the former premier, with the party in power. And the main reason is because of the seats that the CAQ hold, very few, at one point none, in the city of Montreal. We have 27 seats in the National Assembly in the city of Montreal of 127. But we carry a lot more than that in terms of importance, and that was what was missed by the previous government. And one of the nice things of having Soraya's previous experience on the federal scene, she was a federal minister on economic development for Quebec. She has a very good relationship, and the lines are open with, and have been since she was in Ottawa, with the current provincial government. So what you saw the mayor do was say, hey guys, this is about working together, something that hasn't been done recently with the administration, because we are far more important than you give us credit for. Economic engine, we are a tourist draw, and we have a large population that needs to, get the services from the provincial government. So that is what she is saying. It's time to go back to the traditional relationship of Montreal being a leader in how the province governs.
I'm really glad you brought up the whole seats thing, because that sort of leads into my next question. The island of Montreal has traditionally voted Liberal provincially. And I think for the last 8 years, that has left the city of Montreal feeling somewhat disconnected from the CAQ government. There were even accusations, I remember this in the CAQ's first mandate, of them ignoring ridings that they didn't hold. So now that François Legault is out, hopefully there is sort of a change to that mentality. But, we don't necessarily know that the CAQ will form government. It could be the PQ, it could be the Liberals. We really don't know what could happen in October, right?
Well, the good news is, whether it's the CAQ, the Parti Québécois, or the Liberals who will ultimately win the election, Soraya has met with all those leaders and others who are also running and spelled out what she wants and has a good connection, and they know. And they were not surprised when Soraya held a press conference this week that she is upping the game of the city to play a role and to have more of a say on issues like you said off the top. Homelessness. Homelessness is a public health crisis. As well as it is in terms of trying to find housing. And Santé Québec isn't stepping up, and we want to see more of a role to help and ultimately either prevent or deal with the mental health crisis on the ground. And to do that, we need money because they've sort of passed the problem on to the municipality, and while we have tripled our budget, it's not enough to get a solution. It is a short-term plan to be able to start the process, but we have to get Quebec on board to make it work. Infrastructure. If you walk down St. Catherine Street in my district, you know what we're doing there, and we have an issue with the water. My colleague on the executive committee, Alan D'Souza, he's dealing with, and we heard this summer, please keep your consumption of water low. The good news is we're almost through that project, and we've done well as a city. So congratulations for that. But it's only the beginning of the work that we have to do. And in terms of the economic support, which is the third demand, we covered that. I mean, we need to sort of invest in the city as a province, and the winner will not just be the city, it will be Quebec.
Yeah, and that's interesting, Leslie, because I took calls on this a little bit earlier, asking people what their wish list was, what issues mattered most to them.
And what they tell you?
Nobody said climate change, nobody said homelessness, but a lot of people were saying healthcare. And it's interesting because it all goes hand in hand. If we address the homelessness issue, if we address affordable housing, there would be less of a burden on the healthcare system, thus, reducing wait times and opening up access. So everything is really interconnected, isn't it?
Let me expand on exactly that point, and I think this is a very important one you raised up, and thank you for that. When you think about the amount of resources, whether it's a city or whether it's our police department, whether it's our hospitals that we're dealing with the homelessness crisis, the mental health crisis, they're all interconnected, as you say. so much time, so many hospital beds, so many ER seats are in the process of being used because we're not addressing the source of the issue. Whether it's addiction, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's just someone down on their luck. And that is what we are calling. You need to address that, and the benefits will trickle across, as you said, not only in terms of seeing fewer people on the corner who are begging for money because they have nothing to buy food with, but it's also going to help clear up the ERs, open up some hospital beds, and reduce the amount of time that the police have to address this issue and get back to some more, I would say, crucial public security issues than just trying to help someone go from a park where they've set up for the night into a shelter, or from a park to, if God forbid, their health issues, to an ER. And that's what's happening, quite frankly, right now in the city of Montreal.
There are also unique challenges with governing a city like Montreal, which is modern and populated, but also is very, very old. I feel like every winter we've got a pipe burst somewhere and you find out it's an old wood pipe. Updating our infrastructure is a serious undertaking. So it's a little disingenuous to compare the needs of a city like Montreal to a city like Calgary, for example, which is a lot more modern.
It's interesting. I got a tour of the chantier, the construction site on St. Catherine from the city. They took me down there. And to make a long story short, we have for decades upon decades sort of made Band-Aid solutions. So if you go down to the very core in the hole, and it's quite deep, you will find infrastructure from the early 1900s that are still in use. And they would just make a repair and then put something to fix it on top of that. And then the next time it broke, they'd put something on top of that. So we're kind of doing a root canal right now, which is why St. Catherine's going to be shut down till 2029 to fix it. And that's just a snapshot of what we're facing as a city. So as I mentioned, Mr. D'Souza is all over this. He's looking at other necessary jobs that have to be fixed before they break, like what happened on Papineau when CJAD used to be there. I mean, those are the things that quite honestly, we're facing. We've got the red flags, we're doing the inspections, and we're trying to fix it before we get to the point where it has to break.
Is there sort of a wish list? I know you're not going to say which party you hope wins, obviously, but, is there any issues that you foresee depending on who potentially gets into government, and how is the city prepared to deal with those issues? Like if it's another CAQ government, for example, and Montreal, once again, if they overwhelmingly vote Liberal?
Well, I think the established relationship that Soraya has made, she'll work with anybody, and that's our job, right? We represent Montreal and who's ever in power, and I think it's a mutual benefit because a good Montreal is a good Quebec. So to answer your question, I would say she's already opened up those lines of communication, already probably has each of those leaders on speed dial if necessary, and you'll see a very different relationship with the new government in power provincially, and hopefully that they will echo our plans that we will do during our first mandate to make Montreal stronger, as we outlined earlier.
Leslie Roberts is City Councillor for Peter McGill, part of the Executive Committee responsible for the English-speaking community, universities, and the downtown core. Thanks so much, Leslie, for coming on today. Appreciate it.
It's great talking to you. Thanks, Robin.
Likewise. Coming up on the 10:30 news, my name is Robin Flynn, and I am filling in for Elias Macos. CAQ leader Christian Frechette is about to meet with Quebec's Lieutenant Governor to officially call a provincial election. 39 days. That's how much time we have until we go to the polls. Coming up after your 10:30 news with James Foster, Raphaël Melançon and Daniel Tran will join me in studio. We will have continuing coverage of this election as it kicks off. That's coming up next.
Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is on now. Right now at Wayfair, you can get up to 70% off everything home. Shop Wayfair's Labor Day clearance now through September 7th at wayfair.ca.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice.
Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.
The Elias Macos Show, on demand.
On demand. Don't miss a thing.
Find your favorite clips at CJAD800.com and on the free iHeartRadio app.
Robin Flynn filling in for Elias Makos. A Quebec election has officially been called just moments ago. Quebec Premier Christine Frichette went in to meet with Quebec's Lieutenant Governor, which means we have entered the campaign. We are headed to the polls in October. Raphaël Melançon and Daniel Tran join me in studio coming up next.
Voices you trust to deliver the news.
Here's what's making news right now.
And help you make sense of it.
What's scaring Quebecers the most?
The key message here, though, is
the station Montrealers have relied on for 80 years. Your station.
Your voice.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Let's be real. Life is expensive right now.
Luckily, CJAD 800's Cash Call is here to help with $200 in free money.
Just head to CJAD800.com to sign up. Then, starting Monday,
listen weekdays after the 7 a.m. news.
If Andrew Carter calls your name, you have exactly 8 minutes to call back and claim your cash. Free money.
If you miss it, the jackpot grows. So get that money before someone else does. Cash Call.
Cash Call.
From News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is on now. Right now at Wayfair, you can get up to 70% off everything home. Shop Wayfair's Labor Day clearance now through September 7th at wayfair.ca.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
Breaking news. Considered.
The
Elias Makos Show.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Vraiment très contente. C'est une belle journée, une magnifique journée. J'ai hâte d'aller à la rencontre des Québécois là, partout au Québec. Vraiment, c'est une belle aventure qui s'amorce et contente d'avoir mon conjoint à mes côtés.
Votre état de nervosité, Mme Frichette?
Je me sens très zen, je vous dirais, là, vraiment. On a des gros défis devant nous. Va falloir être très attentif et je vais être au rendez-vous, mais pour le moment,
pourquoi
voilà,
39 jours? Parce que
Merci.
Vous croyez que vous êtes la meilleure pour faire face à Donald Trump au tarif?
Il faut rencontrer le plus grand nombre de Québécois possible. Alors 39 jours, je pense que ça nous permet de faire une très grande tournée.
That is CAQ leader Christine Frichette moments ago, or more than moments ago, about an hour ago, as she entered to go meet with Quebec's Lieutenant Governor to officially call an election in Quebec. My name's Robin Flynn, filling in for Elias Makos, and I'm joined now in studio by Daniel Tran, political analyst and former political advisor in economic development at Montreal City Hall. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning.
Also joined by Raphaël Melançon, political analyst for CTV Montreal and CJAD 800, columnist for the Montreal Gazette. Your lives just got very, very busy, didn't they?
Well, we're starting a long marathon that's going to last for 39 days for sure. And, for us political nerds, and Daniel is one of them for sure, it's our Olympics. It's happening every 4 years. I'm as excited as a 6-year-old on Christmas morning right now, to be honest.
I thought that clip from Christine Frichette that we just played was interesting. When she was asked by reporters how she was feeling, she said she was feeling zen. So I'm, picturing her now doing like her morning meditation, doing some yoga before she went to meet with the Lieutenant Governor. Are you surprised by that reaction, Daniel?
Not at all, because it's almost like stepping into the ring too. Just the moment all the preparation done, you have to have that quick balance between nervousness and also ready to go to war. And I think, and I wish best of luck for all the candidates, because humanly it's going to be a lot. 39 days of talking to people, 39 days of connecting as well. So it's a lot.
And if I were Christine Frichette this morning, I would be more zen than I would have been a week ago, because the situation has completely changed with the new tariffs coming into force, the crisis with the Trump administration. So the odds of her being able to turn things around for her party right now are much better than they were just a week ago, because as we know, in times of crisis, people are looking for stability, and it's usually to the advantage of the incumbent.
Yeah, it's interesting because things can change on a dime, right? Like if you recall, right before Mark Carney became prime minister of this country, when Justin Trudeau was still leader of the Liberals, it was a foregone conclusion that Pierre Poilievre was going to become the next prime minister. The Conservatives were going to form a majority government. That was what we were discussing. And then it just flipped. Mark Carney went on Jon Stewart and everything changed in that moment. And I think that the big announcement where Christine Frechette was standing next to Mark Carney last week really flipped this election on its head.
And the way she handled it also through the weekend, you know, she put partisanship aside. She met with all the party leaders. Basically, they picked some ideas from the blueprint from the pandemic with François Legault, and they got inspiration from this. And she's following basically the same standards or same path as François Legault did during the pandemic to mobilize, to unite Quebecers in the face of adversity. And I would say really for Christine Frechette right now, you know, you don't want to start the campaign being the first in place in the polls. And it's a very difficult position to hold for the PQ and Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, because once you start going down in the polls in just 39 days, it's very difficult to turn things around when the spin becomes very negative around your party. So you want to be the underdog, as Christine Frechette is at the moment. Nobody saw her on the radar so far. And she, as the Léger poll just 2 days ago showed, she's picking up momentum already.
Yeah, the latest poll from Léger has the CAQ sitting tied for second with 23% support. So Frechette has only been premier since April. This is, you know, a very sort of, when we call her an incumbent, she's a very recent incumbent. So does she still hold that advantage that a typical incumbent would see, Daniel?
The advantage, and just like Raphaël is mentioning, is that she's managing in the times of crisis, right? So not only she gets airtime, she gets to have the opportunity to show what a commander-in-chief will be in action, versus the other candidates who are, of course, in the media, do not have that opportunity. So that's an opportunity that she has. And at the same time, let's remember, yes, we are in times of crisis, but there's also a big agreement that was signed between Quebec and Newfoundland Labrador with the Churchill Agreement, right? So in this case, she's able to not only show that she's there to command, to be connect with people, but at the same time, how she can lead. So that's an advantage that she has over her opponent at this moment.
And that she can work and collaborate with the rest of Canada as well. I would add to that, it's, you know, you want to embody the role that you want to continue to play, and this is what she's doing. She's showing leadership. She's showing stateswomanship here, and I would say on top of that, of all party leaders, she's the only one who has ministerial experience. So it's a big advantage for her, because not only was she a minister, she's the incumbent premier, but on top of that, she was for a long time the economy minister. So in times of economic uncertainty, that is, in my point of view, a big quality that she has to offer to Quebec voters.
So let's talk about some of the other parties as well, not spend all our time talking about the CAQ. So Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, as you mentioned, is sort of coming in as the favorite, if you will. But with the trade talks in the U.S. and the tariffs, I think that is going to severely hurt him. I was surprised by that press conference last week when he said, we will not hold a referendum till after Donald Trump is in office. That to me showed weakness. And I think that sort of resonated with other Quebecers as well.
And his base, because let's not forget, sovereignty for the PQ is always the same thing. Every single election, it's an engine to mobilize your base, to keep your volunteers motivated, because they're there for the cause. They're fighting for a country. But at the same time, it's also a burden to convince a majority of Quebecers to vote for you. And as we have seen over the past few months, it seems like the PQ has reached a ceiling around 30%, which is somehow the same proportion of the population which supports sovereignty. So you have to reach out to other Quebecers if you want to stand a chance at having a majority government, especially if the vote is split between potentially 4 parties, including the Quebec Conservatives. You have to reach out to other Quebecers, which are not necessarily, they're soft nationalists, they're not necessarily sovereignists. So it was, in my point of view, an admission that sovereignty right now, the time was not proper to talk about sovereignty in a referendum, because it would add another layer of uncertainty on top of all the uncertainty we already have in this province at the moment.
Now, let's look at those polls again. So the PQ currently sitting in first place in the polls with 30%. They sit in first place in the Quebec City area, and they're tied for first for all of Quebec. They're in second place on and off the island of Montreal. Now, typically, Montreal has voted Liberal. And I think that perhaps the CAQ and PQ could be targeting those seats potentially in this election, Daniel?
Well, at the east end of Montreal, we know that Stéphane Paquet, the ex-executive director of Montreal International, who's really well known economically, is going to run in that area. And if we look at the polls that came out very recently, is that a lot of the work will be done in the 450 region. Yeah. Back in the days, we were looking at 450 as a monolith, people voting the same way. But now we can even break it down further. Laval is, as of today, leaning towards the Liberal Party of Quebec. The North Shore and the South Shore of the Greater Montreal area, this is where the battles between the PQ and the Coalition Avenir Québec will be very, very interesting to follow.
Mm-hmm. The problem with the Liberals is that they're standing at only 14% right now among Francophone voters. So if you want to get out of the Greater Montreal area, you're going to have to make gains there with Francophone voters. And so far, we haven't seen any strategy from the Liberal leader, Charles Milliard, working to bring Francophone voters to be interested in the party. And it seems to me like, sadly for the Liberals, the brand is highly tarnished with, the Brownygate. And even though this week we've heard reports from La Presse and our colleagues at Nouveau Info saying that, Rodriguez was probably not involved directly in those scandals. It seems like it's not changing. The needle is still not moving for the Liberals among Francophone voters particularly. And even if you look at the West Island, earlier this week, the Gazette had an exclusive Léger poll where it showed that even the Liberals are losing ground in the West Island among Anglo and Allophone voters. They're not as strong as they historically are usually, and we see the Quebec Conservative Party picking up some momentum at 20%. So not enough maybe to gain seats in the West Island, but if it continues like that, who knows what could happen.
In addition to having that whole Pablo Rodriguez mess that happened, Charles Milliard is entering his first provincial election as leader. He was elected in February of this year, but the party also lost 8 candidates in the last 3 months for various reasons. And that to me is significant. How do you get the support of the province when you don't even have the support of your own party?
That's very concerning. And I'm putting out because obviously teams work really hard during the campaign. Normally you have teams that do what we call the vetting, like looking through all your past history, if there's any legal issues, scroll down in social media to see if there's any skeletons in the closet. And in this case, what I'm concerned is that how invested was this team? Of course, it's difficult, it's time consuming. But 8 candidates, that's a lot, especially when the start is right now, every second counts.
7 of them chose not to run for, quote, personal reasons. Mm-hmm. I mean, at some point, that's a lot of personal reasons compared to other parties, at least. And this morning, what we hear is an 8th candidate, Charles Milliard, chose to basically show the door to one of his candidates in Rimouski. We don't have much details so far, but what we hear, the rumors are that there were some declarations that were unacceptable in the eyes of the Liberal Party from that candidate. And that's what pushed Charles Milliard to basically ask this candidate not to run anymore for the Liberal Party. But you know what? On the first day of the campaign, it starts very badly. It shows. I mean, it looks really bad for the Liberals to start the campaign with bad news like that.
We're going to continue this conversation after we check traffic.
Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is on now. Right now at Wayfair, you can get up to 70% off everything home. Shop Wayfair's Labor Day clearance now through September 7th at wayfair.ca.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
Debate, interviews, and breaking news. The Elias Macko Show. News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Robin Flynn filling in for Elias Mackos, joined in studio right now by Raphaël Melançon and Daniel Tran. We're talking about The Quebec election, which has officially kicked off. We were having a great conversation off air about the signs. If I may, gentlemen, bring this onto the air before we start talking about the Conservative Party. I had mentioned I live in Chateauguay on the South Shore, and I noticed the signs this morning when I was driving into the station. We have a CAQ incumbent, and I mentioned that the Liberal posters, I didn't even know it was the Quebec Liberal Party until I really looked and noticed the logo, because the posters are blue instead of red. And Raphael, you said that is on purpose.
That is meant, it's something we've seen from the Liberals before. When they know that their brand is not that strong among Quebec voters, they usually make their boards not look too liberal, not too red, so that people see this as, there's new positioning also that Milliard is pushing about being nationalist, regionalist as well, for whatever it means. I feel like it's really in line with that strategy, not to look too liberal to the eyes of voters.
Interesting. And you had mentioned, Daniel, that it almost looked municipal, their posters.
Exactly, because you see the background, you see like greenery in the back. So if you don't really follow politics, it's really hard for you to see. You're looking at the poster like, am I voting for the Quebec election or am I voting for something else?
I thought it was interesting, too, that when it came to the name, it's the first name that is capitalized and made really, really bold, and the surname is in a smaller font. They want you to remember the person's first name. Is that a strategy to sort of humanize yourself to the electorate?
Exactly. It makes it helps developing a closer relationship with voters. On the other hand, though, the CAQ this year is putting more emphasis on the last name. So their slogan is Avançons, moving forward, and then underneath it, it's written avec, with, and the name of the candidate. So the name is tied to the slogan Avançons avec, for instance, Robin Flynn.
Interesting. Two completely different strategies, and we'll have to wait and see which one pays off, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the Quebec Conservative Party. You mentioned that they are gaining steam in some traditionally Liberal-held ridings. Currently, they sit in fourth with 16% of the vote, according to the latest polls. They have leads in areas like Chaudière-Appalaches, but they're tied for third on the island of Montreal. What are we expecting from Éric Duhaime and the Conservatives in this campaign?
Well, right now with the poll, we see that the votes are very concentrated at the east portion of Quebec, near the greater Quebec region. What's really interesting this election compared to the last one is that the last election, Éric Duhaime was gaining momentum, but the vote was so widespread that they were not able to get a single seat. This election, however, there's two things. Not only they are projected to have some seats, which is really interesting. I'll be definitely looking into that. But that being said, with the way that the number of seats are being distributed, they may also decide the fate of the next government, whether it's a majority or a minority government.
Hold the balance of power. And maybe even who knows, maybe even have official party status at the National Assembly. They need 12 seats in order to get that. And that's a possibility at the moment. If you look at the latest projections, Quebec 125 is giving them, I believe, 11 seats, mainly concentrated in the greater Quebec City area and the South Shore of Quebec City, the Beauce region. So they could get that official party status. It wouldn't be just 1 or 2 seats for Éric Duhaime and maybe somebody else, but official party status, it's a big thing. And, it would be some kind of conservative revival in Quebec, where the party has been absent for nearly, 90 years. The last time the Quebec Conservative Party, the historic Quebec Conservative Party, got seats in the National Assembly, at that time it was called the Legislative Assembly, it was in the 1930s.
Wow. That's been a while.
Yeah, that's been a while.
It's been a while. It's interesting because the Quebec Conservative Party has always managed to get votes. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they had a lot of similar votes in Montreal as the Quebec Liberal Party did, but it was spread out and it's not concentrated. So how do you try and concentrate your votes so that you can pick up seats and gain ridings?
One of the tactics to begin with is to start defensively, because if you put the same level of energy everywhere, you're gonna spread too thin.
Yep.
So focus on defense, focus on seats that you can win, talk to voters and try to make sure that you get their information to make sure that they go out to vote. Once you have a feeling during the campaign that things are getting stable, then you can expand and see if you can gain momentum. And just like Raphaël was mentioning, they do want, of course, to get official party status. So that's the moment they can really be very surgical and tactical and really identify the regions that can gain votes.
You have to focus your efforts and your energies on certain regions, and you have to target a certain type of elector. You don't want to. The goal, we don't live in a proportional system. We live in a first past the post system. So it's about the number of seats you get in the end. It's not about the number of votes you get nationally. So and that's exactly what Jim did. So first of all, he did a lot of work to professionalize his party since the last election. He put aside some of the elements that were more radical in his platform, among also his team. So he did a lot of work, and I would say good work. He was pretty efficient. He also tried to reach out and to seduce the Anglo vote in the West Island. Yeah. And that's why we see him standing at 20% today. He's in second place after the Liberals, around 55%, but way ahead the other parties among Anglo and allophone voters. So it seems like it could be paying off for the Quebec Conservatives, especially in the greater Quebec City area, as we mentioned earlier. But in terms of, it's a smaller party, you have less volunteers, you have less staff as well. So you're going to have, for your get out the vote strategy, to identify voters, to canvass. Don't go around the whole province. Focus your energies on certain regions where you really stand a chance at winning seats.
I also want to talk about Quebec Solidaire. This is a very different campaign for Quebec Solidaire. When I think of Quebec Solidaire, I picture Manon Massé, Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois. That is still what comes to mind. But now we have co-spokespersons Ruba Gazal and Sol Zanetti, who are entering their first provincial election with those titles as co-spokespersons. First of all, this whole co-spokesperson thing that Quebec Solidaire does that hurt them, not having a traditional leader like the other parties do?
It does, because ultimately you want to have a picture, right? You want to have somebody, okay, I will believe in you. I will give you the key for the power of National Assembly. On top of that, the status that they have two co-spokesperson. And on top of that, inside their party, they have somebody who's being executive director, being able to make some calls for the direction and orientation, which is very tough for the population to understand where they're going.
I have to disagree with Daniel in all due respect. I don't think it's going to make any difference because, first of all, the party designates one of the two spokesperson to be the premier if ever Quebec Solidaire were to form the next government. Okay. And it's clear that it will be Ruba Gazal. She's the one who will be representing the party in national debates, for instance. So to me, it's clear that the real leader of Quebec Solidaire at the moment is Ruba Gazal, not Sol Zanetti. There's a particular reason for that. They know that, Sol Zanetti can be a loose cannon sometimes, so they don't want him to be like at the forefront and the face of the party among the population. But at the same time, I feel like for their base, it doesn't make any difference. They're going to vote for Quebec Solidaire no matter what. But for the rest of the population, everybody understands that at 7%, there's absolutely no chance right now that Quebec Solidaire, no matter who the co-spokesperson is the designate person to be the premier, there's no chance in hell right now that Quebec Solidaire is going to form the next government. So the question to me is not about who's going to be the premier for Quebec Solidaire. That's not even a question on the table.
Christine Frichette is just exiting the Quebec Lieutenant Governor's office, it seems. So we're officially into the campaign, Yay. Gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. Raphaël Melançon, political analyst for CTV Montreal and CJAD 800, columnist for the Montreal Gazette. You're going to be on CTV pretty much every day from here on out.
Pretty much every day. I'll be on CJAD many times during the week as well, in the Gazette, of course. And I have a special thought for all the candidates, the volunteers, the staffers right now who are on the campaign trail. I've been there many times before. It's quite a marathon. I'm starting my own marathon with you this morning. Yep. So I'm looking forward definitely to be back with you soon.
Daniel Tran, political analyst, former political advisor in economic development at City Hall. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And just like Raphaël is mentioning, thoughts also for the teens, but also for their families. It's a lot of loved ones that will have to cook to make sure to take care of the kids and look at taking care around the house, helping out during the campaign too. So shout out for all these people as well.
We will have continuing coverage throughout the day of the Quebec election and throughout the next 39 days. As they mentioned, it's our Olympics. We're going to keep this going. After the 11 o'clock news, we will shift gears a little bit though and talk about Donald Trump. Is he beginning to lose his base? We'll speak with a writer from The Atlantic after the news.
This newscast brought to you by Supermarché Ackevan, where fresh, hot bread is baked on the spot every day. Freshness you can taste, quality you can trust.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.